Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. This morning's briefing is one that I've been meaning to tackle for a while, so let's address the curious case of Akon, or A the Con is more like it. Every time he opens his mouth, something stupid falls out. And it seems like he's in a competition with himself to see if he can top the most stupid thing that he said the day before. This fool hasn't been relevant since forever, and if it wasn't for his garbage comments, we wouldn't even remember he existed. Akon is just this putrid ball of insecurities, and he's got plenty of justification to be insecure, so he attacks black Americans as his means of trying to make himself stand out from the crowd, because he desperately wants an identity of his own. And he's ashamed of the fact that the only reason he was able to get two nickels to rub together is because he had to pretend to be the very people that he cannot be. So to try to suppress or otherwise bear these deep-rooted feelings of insecurity and inferiority, he decides that he's going to take shots at us, and the lower the better as he sees it. Like the time when he said that black Americans need to let go of slavery. This clown knows all about letting go. He let go of his homeland and everything else just to get here, to the very people who don't let go of slavery. If Akon and his people don't think about slavery except when they're around us, then why did they come over here to be among us? Shouldn't he be back home among the people who have let go of the past and are moving forward? Oh, except they're not moving forward. See, Akon and his folks were the ones who collaborated with the Europeans in the slave trade, so of course he would want us to forget about that. What he means is, hey, I've been eating off of you guys for the longest time by pretending to be one of you. Don't mention the fact that me and my folks, more than likely, we were the ones who were helping the Europeans to carry out the slave trade in the first place, and well, now I'm over here with y'all. Don't remind me of what a fraud I am. Don't remind everybody that I'm just a backstabber. And more recently, of course, everybody knows that he's been saying that African American musicians don't have the same stage presence that African musicians have. Really, fool? You're the one who fled here to where we are. And when you got here, you didn't dress like you were in Senegal. You didn't talk Senegalese. You came over here, you dressed like us, you used our slang, you walked like us, you stood like us, you imitated us to a T. Ain't a dang thing about your performance says African, much less says Senegalese. It says Black American, or at least that's what you've tried to cloak yourself as. And claiming that he has better stage presence than we do, how? If he really believes that African musicians and African performers have more stage presence than we do, then the test of that is real simple. You put 50 or even 50,000 people in a room and ask them to name one African musician. See if they can name even one. Hell, how many of them know that Akon himself is from Africa? Not that many. Akon didn't make his name or his money by being Senegalese, so he had to pretend to be one of us. He owes everything he has to us. But what has Akon done for himself? When people flee and they know they shouldn't have, this is how they live with themselves, by telling themselves they're better than the very people who took them in. But Akon's garbage takes didn't end there.
Do you want to walk that back at all?
No, it's not really more so a walk back. But what I do want to express is that sometimes when comments like that are made, like me, I always speak according to what I'm personally going through myself. Right? And I personally witnessed, and nobody can sit there and tell me that I didn't go through poverty. Yeah. Like I was the, young African kid, barefooted, playing soccer in a village with no electricity, no running water. I knew what that felt like. And believe me, I know what poverty looks like. Yeah. But I also know what success looks like. Yeah. And from my personal experience, I'm having more problems successfully dealing with all that comes with success than I had when I was poor. Right. I was actually happier when I was poor, right? So, But that's my personal experience.
Now we need to take a moment to unpack some of this stupidity. He says that he knows what poverty looks like. I'll bet he does. That's why he got on the first thing smoking to be here. He and all the rest of his kinfolk failed to build where they were. So he had to come over here to where some people were actually building. And when he got here, he and the folks who came with him tried to blend in with us. But as soon as he thought he had a few pennies to his name, he then decided that he could show his behind. Next, he said that he had less problems when he was poor. Really, fool? Well, black Americans can certainly identify with that because we definitely had less problems before Akon showed up. Now, when someone says that they were happier without money, that's a liar. If he meant what he said, then he would have long since given away his money and gone back to no running water and all the rest of it, or at least walked away from the money and fame that he keeps chasing, using our talent and pretending to be one of us to get it. If money is causing Akon all these problems, then he really has an easy way to solve it. But like everything else that rolls off that forked tongue of his, this was just another lie. And speaking of lies, before we forget, does anyone remember when this crackhead was talking about Akon City? Has anyone heard anything about that recently, or at all? Because I sure had a hard time remembering. Oh yeah, most of you don't remember this, but back in 2018, this clown said that he was going to take his money and build Akon City over in Africa somewhere. Actually, his plan was to take other people's money and build a city that he would name after himself. On a side note, you can tell when somebody is really inconsequential and small when this person decides that they're going to try to name something after themselves. Typically, great men have cities or developments or buildings or whatever named after them by other people. But when you're an empty nothing... Anyway, Akon claimed that he was going to fund his planned $6 billion sustainable city through a new cryptocurrency that he named, you guessed it, Acoins, which apparently can be made when people convert their unused prepaid mobile phone minutes to Acoins. I'm not making that up, by the way. He claimed to have some investors who were going to help him fund this plan, but so far that's been more sizzle than steak, though he does have a business partner helping to guide him, and yes, it is a white man named John Karras, who apparently is a former Hollywood producer. So his partner in this venture, if it can be called that, is not a real estate developer, he's not an urban planner, hell, he's not even an architect. He's a guy from Hollywood. And assuming that this pipe dream actually ever does get built, who's supposed to live there? Karras says that he could see Europeans going there as a vacation spot. That's a common theme that you find with Akon and anyone attached to this planned city. A whole lot of imagination going on. A whole lot of daydreaming. Well, I could see this. I could see that. Well, hell, I could see Martians coming to live there. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. Since they already own so much of Africa, though, I guess the Europeans could use Akon City as their own personal playground. I'm sure Elon Musk would get a kick out of kicking Akon out of there. Not that there would be much to rule. Akon said that he could see Senegal's elite living there, and that he would be among them. In fact, he even says that he doesn't like to say that he would be the king of the city, but that he would be the king of the city. Oh, what a great king without a kingdom or a throne, or even a treasury for that matter. I don't see how the hell this is supposed to even happen, and apparently he can't see it either. Neither one of these kooks knows anything about construction or engineering or real estate or urban planning, but they're going to start a city? I guess that explains why so far, after at least 2 years, they haven't even begun to start that city. Akon cares so much about his little pet project that he still spends more time outside of Africa than he does over there. He had to come over to the US to get the game, but he still screwed it up because he's not a builder, he's a talker. He's a professional BS artist. How could this chump ever build a city? You can't teach what you don't know. Well, he certainly chose the right type of currency for his fantasy land. We're seeing one crypto exchange crash right after the other because cryptocurrencies exist somewhere in cyberspace, which is probably where you'll find Akon's magical land of make-believe, because as of this video essay, they haven't even broken ground on it. Oh, so far I've been seeing reports that ground was broken in 2020, and then broken in 2021. Lots of articles. But I don't actually see any proof of any sort of development going on there. In fact, at last report, which was less than 2 weeks ago from the BBC, shows that there's no construction going on at all in Akonville, except for one lonely little cornerstone that they dumped there in 2020. I guess that's why Akon keeps calling his imaginary city Wakanda. Well, that's certainly appropriate. Wakanda doesn't exist either. So Akon wasn't building anything before he came to the US, and now that he has a little money, he still isn't building anything. Keep in mind, this is the reason that these African governments are terrified of black Americans coming over there, because we would actually build, and they would have to live with the humiliation and shame of having been there all this time and having nothing to show for it. By the way, Akon told the BBC that his imaginary city would finally begin excavations before the end of the year. That was in December when he told them that. Well, don't look now, but 2022 is gone, and so far Akon hasn't turned over so much as a pebble. And as for his cryptocurrency, well, that's going the same direction as FTX, straight down. As you can see, the value of Akon started out with a thud in November 2020, then it spiked in February 2021. I think that's when he introduced it in Kenya or something along those lines. But whatever he did, that temporary sugar rush didn't last long at all before the Akoins resumed their downward spiral, and by the end of 2021, it was lower than it had been when it was first introduced. And as of today, Akoins are at historic lows, which ain't saying much considering it doesn't have much of a history. So where does this leave Akon, the would-be king? He has a worthless currency in a city that doesn't exist. Yeah, that sounds about right. You see, Akon can't teach black Americans anything except how to fail. Black Americans built the Black Wall Streets all across the American South. We built the Harlem Renaissance. Most importantly, we built a real reputation for ourselves, one that people know about all over the world and copy and emulate because they envy it. We built the Black Wall Street and black universities, and we didn't have to pull a crypto scam to do it. We've built things we continue to build. Meanwhile, Akon's trying to make himself feel better about the fact that everything he touches withers and dies. His pathetic attempts to one-up us and to show that he could have built something on his own just keep failing. I think Akon needs to stop smoking so much khat or whatever the hell this fool's high on. If you want to know what went wrong in Africa, Akon is a prime example of it. Problem is, he's not alone. Akon is very insecure, and he has a lot of company in that regard. Insecurity is born of failure. Look at his crypto crap scheme and his Akon City, and you see that the record of failure remains unbroken. Akon's problem is he feels like a fraud. He's been feeling like that around us for a very long time. He feels like a phony. He feels like an imposter because he is one. He had to come over here to where we are just so he would have even a slim sliver of a chance to make something of himself. And when he got over here, he had to look, talk, act, and behave just like us, just so he could become successful. He sees in us people who made their stand and didn't run like he did. It hurts his little feelings and undermines his little ego when he remembers the fact that he had to come to us and become like us. None of us were trying to become like him. He looks at black Americans and he sees everything he's not, but desperately wishes he could be. He feels like a fake, but most of all, he feels like a failure. He's living a lie. Being Senegalese didn't get him what he wanted. He had to come over here and try to become one of us. Black Americans are the face of black people worldwide, but most of all, we're the face of black achievement because we've made our mark. If you say Senegal, what exactly would people even think of? And that's why you see Akon going all out of his way to take shots at us. That's what he thinks of when he looks in the mirror. Who is he? A fraud who had to pretend to be other people just to become successful. Nobody wants him for him. The only reason that anybody was interested in him for the brief time that people were was because they thought he was one of us. That's the reason why his city is still scrub brush and his cryptocurrency isn't worth 2 cents. I'll bet when Akon looks in the mirror, he feels quite ashamed. He should. That eats him alive. So to live with himself, he has to lie and lie big. But what else would we expect from someone who has so little character that he decided to flee from home rather than fight for it? So Akon, you're not fooling anyone. As for presence, you've got about as much presence as your failed cryptocurrency and your failed wannabe village. Oh, and just for the record, calling your little wannabe town Wakanda, the only reason, and I mean only reason, that Wakanda has any sort of esteem or cachet attached to it, the only reason that Wakanda became any sort of name brand is because of Black Americans. You look at the amount of money that the Black Panther movie made, and it made 3/4 of its money in the United States. Didn't make it in Africa, and definitely didn't make that much money in Senegal. Akon knows that too. Right now, he's blaming COVID for his not having built Akon City. For a guy who thought that he would score some quickie brownie points with these white supremacists by sounding like them and saying these Black Americans, they're just living in the past. They blame the past for everything. What's he doing? He's blaming the past for what he hasn't done. Even though he hadn't gotten a dang thing done before the pandemic and hasn't gotten anything done afterwards. Personally, I really don't care if Akon wants to continue running his butt kisser about us, but I would say that I wish that he would learn to talk and fail a little bit more quietly. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Samantha Ellis, David Duncan, Suleiman Alaji, Sherman Marshall, and Shannon Moore. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.